Do you ever wonder why you can edit an amazing image 1 minute, but then your next 10 photos lack that same wow factor? I used to have this problem too, but through years of trial and error, I've figured out what I was doing wrong and how to solve it. So in this video, I'm going to show you what I did so that you too can level up your editing and pump out amazing photos every time. Let me show you the first thing you need to do to guarantee consistently high quality edits. It's like this. Imagine you're a carpenter and you need to build a chair a day for 10 days in a row. You've got a workshop full of all the tools that you're going to need. You know roughly what the chairs should look like, but you don't have a blueprint. So what happens? At the end of the 10 days, you have 10 chairs, and surprise, surprise, they're all slightly different. Maybe if you're a master carpenter already, then you could probably have done a good job without a blueprint. But if you're anything less than a master, then you really need that blueprint to have any kind of consistency. And it's the same for your photo editing. The truth is, if you want consistent results, you need to follow a blueprint or workflow. In other words, consistency comes from making the same editing decisions in the same order every time you edit a photo. Now, here's the thing. When I took all of the individual techniques and everything that I'd learned over the years and arranged them into a consistent 6-stage, step-by-step editing workflow, my consistency skyrocketed. And since then, I've taught that same workflow to literally tens of thousands of photographers in a free guide, which you can download from the link in the description and pinned comment. So a consistent workflow is what gives you consistent results. But next, I want to show you a quick tip to help make your edits look more dynamic. Now, it took me years to discover this, but literally only a minute to learn it. And ever since then, it's been an important tool for avoiding flat landscape edits. Because one of the tricky things about editing landscapes is that the more colorful the scene is, the easier it is for the colors to distract you. So you kind of overlook what's happening with the light. When that happens, it can lead to colorful but flat looking images. So a great way to solve this is to periodically check what your image looks like in black and white. And then if the light doesn't look good in black and white, then it probably doesn't look great in color either. This next tip is guaranteed to give you at least 10% more portfolio level photos than you have right now without you even taking another shot. Because I used to think that every pixel was sacred and that anything less than the full resolution of my raw files was just totally unacceptable. Which meant if I didn't absolutely nail a composition in camera, then that shot was a write-off. What I wish I'd realized sooner is that I'd much rather have a perfectly composed image at half the resolution than a wonky composition at full resolution. So I started taking those compositions that didn't quite work out and cropping them for composition. Sure, I might not be able to print them as large as I'd have been able to at full res, but A, I have a lot more great looking photos to show for my efforts. B, are we really printing all our photos that large and putting them on the wall anyway? Or just a select few? This next tip is an absolute game changer that took me way too long to stumble across, and when I eventually did, it made me realize a big flaw in a lot of my old photos, because so many of them would end up just being colorful, full of contrast, but somehow still flat. I didn't realize it because at the time I didn't truly understand how to edit for the kind of depth that makes you feel like you can step right into a photo. And it had everything to do with how I used contrast. It wasn't the specific techniques that were the problem. I was already using advanced techniques like luminosity masking to make incredibly accurate selective contrast adjustments. The problem was that I was choosing to enhance contrast in all the right places and all the wrong places too. So what are the right and wrong places? Well, a few years ago when I started looking at how painters create a realistic sense of depth in a landscape painting, that I realized where I was going wrong in my photo editing. I asked myself, how did they make one thing look far away and another thing look close? So check out this amazingly high quality painting that I made in Photoshop. One small and one large grassy hill next to each other. Or is it two large grassy hills but one's further away? It's impossible to tell, right? So the reason you can't tell is because there's no atmospheric perspective, which is the effect the particles in the air have on the visibility of things in the distance. And that usually results in lower contrast. When I reduce the contrast of the small hill, it immediately starts receding into the distance, right? And check this out. Which one's closer now? Anyway, when I applied this idea to my photo editing and stopped pushing the contrast to the max in all areas of my images, regardless of distance, suddenly they gained a sense of depth and felt more three-dimensional than ever. Now, there's a cool feature in Photoshop that lets you edit things based on how far away they are from the camera. For example, you can add saturation to the foreground and not the background, or you can increase light in the background without affecting the foreground. And the secret is this thing here, an automatically generated depth mask that restricts any adjustment to either the foreground or the background of the landscape photo. The problem is that this feature is hidden away in a place no one ever looks, so watch this next video and I'll show you exactly where to find it and how to make it quick and easy to use.